Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to a very special episode 99 of Speaking from the Heart. Now, today I'm doing a little bit different, and if you were expecting a monologue episode, you are in for a surprise because instead we have a guest being featured on episode number 99 in lieu of my own monologue. And the reason why is because this is the eve of my 100th episode in which I'm doing something very special. I decided to switch things up. So thank you if you were anticipating listening to a monologue episode. You get to hear from somebody that I have really enjoyed working with, and you will see why in this episode. Today we have Brock Waluk with us, and Brock grew up in the small town of Waluk, Pennsylvania, and currently resides in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, in which he had grew up to be a good kid, but had a very rebellious stint after graduating high school, where he ended up being arrested and in jail a few times, but learned a lot in the process of making poor life choices. He was the first to attend a higher education university, which is Lock Haven University, in his family, where he studied sports medicine and athletic training, and was married at 23 years of age. He later divorced at 30 years of age, where during that marriage, his amazing 8-year-old son, Justice, was born. He remarried in 2022 at 37 years of age to his beautiful wife, Courtney, who does social media for a few local companies, including Brock's own business, Next Generation Personal Training, which we talk a lot about in this episode. He started Next Generation Personal Training in 2015 and has been training for a total of 16 years overall. In 2022, he partnered with Arc Fitness, also located in Mechanicsburg, opening in August of 2022, where they had grown from 2 trainers to over 12 trainers, and from 70 clients to almost 300. Now, there will be a very important connection that you probably have already identified that I will allude to when we open this episode with Brock. But there's a lot that we talked about that even for myself, somebody that has known him now for a few years, my mouth dropped open with some of the things that he had made in terms of those poor choices when he was growing up. But I think that what we learn about ourselves and our past versions of ourselves is even though that we go through hell, we have to find the ways in which we need to get paid for our worth, regardless of the fact that we might have a record of ourselves, which, truthfully, I also have a record of myself, which we'll talk about at the end of this episode. But when you stop believing in those voices that are telling you no, you're going to be able to give yourself so much more value than you might have never realized. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Brock Waluk. Brock, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Dude, I am so pumped to finally get you on the show. And for those that might be wondering, why am I so pumped? And doesn't this name sound familiar? It's because all the way back in episode 6, when I interviewed Noah Snyder of Arc Fitness, there was a connection made because of you being referenced there. So that's where we all bridge this together. So Brock, it's cool to have you on the eve of my 100th episode. So thank you so much for taking some time to be with me today. Brock, I really want to start with this question about your upbringing, because when I let the audience know a little bit about you, I noticed the fact that you lived in Waluk, Pennsylvania. And probably people are like, where is Waluk, Pennsylvania? So do you want to talk a little bit about your upbringing there and getting into some of your early years, especially before you started the business?
Sure, man. So, Waluk, Pennsylvania is in north central PA, and it's a very, very rural area out in the middle of nowhere. Dirt roads, cows, tractors, factory work mostly. And one thing I'll say to keep it quick is that in the biggest way, I noticed that most people that stayed in that area didn't do a lot as far as chasing their dreams or moving forward in their life. It's a lot of factory work. So I appreciate those people because we need those people, but I wanted to get out in the worst way. Right. I worked in those factories. I worked in butcher shops. I worked on farms, and I was like, this sucks for me. Yeah. Again, somebody has to do it, but I just wanted to do something different. Right. So I was looking to get out in the worst way. But I will say that At times, it's cool to grow up in a small town. It's quiet, it's quaint, it's nice to get away, but there's not much to do. I think the closest mall was like an hour and a half. The closest grocery store was a 20-minute drive, and that was a small grocery store. If you wanted to go to a Walmart, that was over an hour drive. So there wasn't a ton to do where I grew up.
It reminds me so much of my childhood too, because I also lived in the boonies, but not so much where you live, because that was truly a once industrial place too, for sure. But for me, I grew up around cow tipping and goats were herding and all kinds
Oh
of
yeah.
things. So I can relate, dude. The dirt roads and all of those things were some of my common occurrences as well. But I've noticed too that you've been to jail. I think that's just, first off, very opening of people, because I would be very ashamed. But I will tell you that even from my own personal experience, I've had my run-ins with the law when I was 16 years of age. So I can definitely relate to having kind of a rebel side. But what exactly transpired to get you in jail?
I went to jail when I was 21, committed a crime when I was 20, and I'll kind of lead up to how that happened. And I was mostly a pretty good kid growing up. I didn't get into a lot of trouble. I played sports, so I wanted to keep my nose clean. I think I had two detentions ever in high school. One of those was from not turning in my homework, and I think one was for talking in class, like those kind of silly things, right? But I went to college, and even prior to college, I wrestled. I got into boxing in college, and I always had a little bit of a rebellious side that was suppressed, I would say, probably for a good reason. And my brother was kind of the same way. It's interesting how I think genetics can play a role in a lot of things. Obviously, environment too. But my brother did a lot of crazy stuff, and we did a lot of crazy stuff together. Not that I need to get into a lot of that, the stuff we didn't get caught for. But I got into this habit in college where I would go to parties, I would drink, and I would fight. And it seemed like it was fun. It was, I don't know, the kind of let out aggression. It was just like your typical stuff. Like kids find an outlet. Like my parents went through a divorce. It was this whole thing. And I had a girlfriend that had broken up with me. And it was like the first heartbreak. It was just like all this stuff that kind of bent up. And so my outlet was to drink at parties, and I wouldn't start fights, but if something was about to go down, I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. That led to multiple occasions of that happening over probably a 6 to 8 month, maybe a year and a half period. And there was a couple close calls where people were getting hurt and cops were called, and I had never gotten in trouble, but for some reason I didn't take that as a warning sign that something bad could happen. And I went to Lock Haven University, and it was my first week of, I guess, what I saw for a year. And I usually would never go out on a Thursday night because I was still attending classes. I wasn't stupid. I mean, yes, I was stupid as far as some of the things I did, but I was showing up to class. I was smart. So it was the only Thursday night, Thirsty Thursday, that I ever went out and just got super drunk. I was on the way home from a party, got in an argument with a guy, got in a fight, and then this one is the one that did me in because I ended up fracturing his eye socket and his cheekbone. I didn't know that at the time. I got called to campus security that night. They found out what happened. There were some witnesses, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the guy had to go to the hospital." I was like, "What? That's crazy!" I just didn't know what was going on, and so they let me go, but they had to report it to the police, right? But the cops weren't there that night. The next night, I was out at Penn State at a bar drinking underage with a friend of mine. Again, I was drunk, and I got a call on my phone, and it was the Clinton County Police Department, which is where Lock Haven's located. And there's like, Mr. Waluk, there's a warrant out for your arrest. You have to turn yourself in. I was like, well, I'm out. I'm at Penn State, drunk right now. I didn't say that, but I was like, I'll turn myself in tomorrow. So I drove back, turned myself in. They booked me. They hit me with aggravated assault, which, if you don't know, is a felony. So I was facing 3 to 5 years in jail. And it turned my life around. I was like, oh my God, this is really real now. I had to call my mom multiple times up to that point of just like smaller things. So then calling my mom to say, hey, mom, I got arrested. You need to come bail me out. So my mom drove down from Wyalusing to bail me out. Obviously, she wasn't super happy with me. And so I got out, and then I still didn't quit. I had lost my license even before that for an underage drinking incident. So I was still underage during this incident. And then I went on for a couple more weeks at school. The school found out about it. I got kicked out of school. I got called to the dean's office. They kicked me out of school because it technically happened on campus. And I went home and I worked construction. the things that I knew how to do at that time, but I still didn't make good choices. I went and I bought a crotch rocket, a GSXR 1000, and then got in a high speed chase with the cops. Yeah, it's stupid, man. I got a gun
What?
drawn on me that time.
What?
So,
Whoa! Wait! So you had the fear of going to jail because of the aggravated assault charge, but yet you went and bought a motorcycle essentially, and you were on a high-speed chase with a cop. Are you serious?
yeah, multiple cops. So it's just, I was reckless, man. Like I was self-destructing my own life, right? And people sometimes go down, I see it, and I think sometimes you can't outperform how you view yourself. And at that point in time in my life, I was viewing myself, I wouldn't call it a loser or whatever. I just felt like I didn't amount to much. So my actions amounted how I viewed myself. I was in this major self-destruct mode. And so I get in this high-speed chase with all these cops through the county and all this stuff. It was crazy, right? And putting myself at risk, putting other people's lives at risk, putting these cops' lives at risk. The first time I ever got a gun drawn on me, right? And thankfully, after I got arrested that time, I'm super polite. Yes, sir. No, sir. And for some reason, the cops like me, the DA like me. They actually let me go and they did not impound my bike. I had to call my mom again. Mom, this is literally 2 months after this other incident happened. I got arrested again. Can you come get me? My poor mother. So,
Yeah, I feel bad for mom in this whole situation, but with all
yeah,
that said, Brock, I mean, first off, I would have never known, and I've known you now for a few years because of Arc Fitness and Noah and getting to know your personality and really know what you are to a core. This completely blows my mind because it's not the same person that I've gotten to know. So, I guess my question
yeah.
is, looking back, do you feel that that old Brock that was going on high speed chases, getting drunk, getting into fights, do you think that he lived in a life of shame?
Yeah, for sure. 100% for sure. And it's interesting too, I'll say that when I then saw, because most people look at me that way. Wow, I can't believe, even prior to me doing that, people were so surprised of my actions, right? Because I was generally a pretty good dude. I was super respectful of people. All my teachers liked me. I was a good kid. So then I'm like going back to my town, I'm going to the local fairs and stuff. And then these people are looking at me because they read it all in the paper, like all this stuff that happened, because that's big news in my town, right? It was definitely a shameful life, but I felt like I couldn't get out of it at that moment for whatever reason. Oh, I wouldn't even say I couldn't. I didn't want to.
What made you
Right.
change then as a result? What was the pivotal moment that made you realize it? Because I know you said earlier that, yeah, when I got the charges, that really changed a lot of things, but it didn't change everything because you went and did it again. So, what was that
Sure.
moment that, like, the snap of the fingers made you realize, shit, I need to change something now, or I'm going to go and have a very bad life, or I'm going to end up in jail for real?
Yeah. There was multiple moments along the way and choices, better choices along the way. But one of those moments was the first night I spent in jail. And not to get into all the stuff that happens, but and it's not like I spent a few months in jail. It wasn't long, but long enough to know, like, wow, I don't want to do that again. Right.
Yeah.
So when you first go in, maybe every jail is different. And actually, I'll say they do things differently, and I'll tell you, but you spend, I can't even remember what it's called now, but basically you're like in solitary for the first few days. So I was in a jail cell by myself, lights on the entire time. They don't shut them off even at nighttime. So days on days, you get let out for 1 hour a day to shower and make a phone call. At least this was their policy. And you can only sleep so much. After the second or third day, man, I broke. I started bawling. I mean, all the emotions that were bent up inside. And I was like, what am I doing to my life? Right. That was one of those pivotal moments. And I had a couple of those along the way and while I was in there. And then I got out and I got in more fights after I got out of jail. But I was making better choices along the way. And then I started making better choices of the people that I was surrounding myself with. Because that's not who I wanted to be. I wanted to be different, but I didn't know where to look, right? Because the people at the time in my life were good people. They're good people at heart, but they're like me, right? And if I want to be different, I need to start looking elsewhere and hanging out with different people that are making different decisions and moving forward with their life because I really wanted that. So I will say there's a couple pivotal decisions along or movements along the way emotionally, but then it was just about making better decisions more often. And that led me down this path of personal growth and personal development for years and years and years. That's still continuing. And then I just found that other side of me. It's still in there. I know it's in there because not that I get moments of like, oh, I want to go back to that life, but that side of me is still there, and I know it's there, but I just kind of keep it at bay. Do you ever hear that one saying about like there's two wolves and whichever one, like it's the one that you feed the most, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I just feed the wolf that's the one that's going to move me in the direction that my life should be going, right? So
I've been talking about this quite a lot, even in my own episodes, about there's really been two versions of me, Brock, that as I've gotten through and grown quite a lot, that I need to separate myself from the old version of who I was because I don't want to feed that anymore. But I really want to be this better version of myself. So it's really been an exploration of, like you said, surrounding yourself with the right people, the right resources, the right sort of attitudes that will help you stay and keep that past version of yourself at bay because it
yeah,
is a part of us. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed by your story of how that transformation has happened for you because, first off, what you didn't say, which I want to re-emphasize for my listeners, is that you were first generation essentially to go to college. Yeah, you were told
yeah,
to go to college, but I think that is so inspiring in a way that you're setting a trend like you've always set that trend. So I got to give you kudos because for some people that I've worked with, even in my business, sometimes just seeing that awareness is a big part of it. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say about that. Is there something that has really helped you to see why it was really important to you to stay in school despite all these things and being kicked out and kind of going back in and getting what you have earned, which essentially getting your athletic training degree, being able to help others with sports medicine. I mean, it's really helped you in what you do now, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But do you think that has
yeah,
played a big role in what you do today?
100%. And I think realizing what my potential could be, I get pretty philosophical with some of this stuff, man. Like I hear things and they just click.
I think you
And
should
go ahead.
drop those
Yeah,
nuggets for our listeners, Brock, if you got them
let's
on your
go.
heart, because I think that it might be something. And I had never heard of anybody being in jail before. I think it's really profound to kind of hear some of these things from you.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I heard along the way that really just made me think of what am I doing and what do I want to be? One of those things is that one day when you're at the end of your life, and whether you believe in an afterlife or there's something after this, right? And there's been other people that have said this, but I'm stealing this. It's not an original thought, but I just like it, right? And then you get the gates or whatever it is, you're in this room and you're seeing this vision or this TV's flashing someone's life before you. It's you on the screen, but your life looks nothing like that. It's like all these things that this person was accomplishing, right? And you're like looking at it, you're like, who's this? And they're like, that's the person that you could have been. Another way to say it is the true definition of hell is the person that you are someday meeting the person that you could have been.
Wow. I don't think I ever thought of it that way, even for
Right.
myself, that I want to put that person in hell, essentially, that I didn't want to be. And yet, at the same
Yeah.
time, I could say one day, ha ha, I was able to accomplish things, and you said I could not. And
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
That keeps me on track. I will say I have a 8-year-old son. He keeps me on track because, I mean, one of my life endeavors is to break off family curses, right? And things that are generational in my family, alcoholism and abuse and divorce. So some of these things I've been able to overcome, some of them it's a work in progress. And I just want my son to be able to stand on my shoulders and not have to go through the same stuff that I went through. So it's like a mission of mine, legitimately, to defeat these demons or whatever you want to call it that have been in my family for years and years.
I can't tell you how much I resonate with that at this very moment, even as I go through and I look at some of the things that have happened in my life and I realize, wow, I do not want to repeat the same mistakes as my father, my mom. I want to learn from what they have been through and also not repeat those same behaviors that got them in what they are in the first place, which I'm not saying they haven't had a fulfilling life, don't get me wrong, but I've definitely seen where there could be some changes that happen. And I'm really happy to hear that you are on the right and narrow, which, speaking of your son, I know that you were just remarried in the last year or so, or couple years.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to meet Courtney. She's an awesome person. I feel like
Yeah.
she's definitely the second half of you.
Yeah.
How has that been, especially with Courtney working with the business? And I know she supports you. She does other social media as part of her overall skills, but how's that dynamic?
Well, I'll say that the dynamic between us is really great, right? And I think the biggest thing of why we're so cohesive, like we laugh, we have fun, we have a great time, but she allows me to lead. She has never held me back. She's always been a cheerleader of mine. She's believed in me, which then has allowed me to believe in myself. And I think this to be true for most men is that you spend your 20s trying to figure out who you are, right? And then your 30s, maybe still doing some of that, but refining and now starting to make true decisions of this is who I actually want to be. This is what I want to be defined as. And she's helped me figure that out along the way. And unfortunately, obviously I was married previously, that my first became the collateral damage of me trying to figure out who I was supposed to be because I got married at 23, my first marriage, when I had not a clue who I was or who I wanted to be or what I wanted to represent. So that's one of those demons that I didn't beat, so to speak, because my parents were divorced. My brother's been through multiple divorces, all these types of things. But it's about learning, it's about growing, it's about making adjustments along the way and figuring that type of stuff out. But it's been great with her. And for her, she's still trying to figure out the things that she wants to do. And I'll say that I just support her. She's done multiple career changes through the years. She was into fitness for a while, then she did a fashion blog. So whatever she's into, I just support her and people figure out along the way.
It's a great partnership in a way, which actually is a great transition into when you started Next Generation Personal Training in 2015.
Yeah.
And I know that this predated before even what we were just talking about with Courtney, but
Yeah.
I think for our audience, first off, you do something that is quite unique. And I even expressed this to Noah in episode 6 about the values that both of you have aligned with being co-owners together with this big vision. In your own words, and I'm sure that you probably listened to what Noah had to say in that episode, but give me your own personal take with working with Arc Fitness and working with now new clients that come through that and the expansion of your business because it has seen leaps and bounds. What has that defined for you, Brock, in terms of your relationship with your clients, with leading a team of 12 people now? What has that really demonstrated for you in terms of your own personal and professional growth?
Yeah. So I'll say this. It was just me for a long time as a trainer. And then I brought on one or two trainers over the years. And then I met a guy named Yoli. So I don't need to get into the whole story, but him and I were the foundation of Next Generation Personal Training. And that's when this vision was birthed of starting something better. And to kind of go back, I was doing training for 7, 8 years before I started NGPT. And I just saw that there was a huge gap in the training industry of what was being offered as a product and actually what was being delivered upon. I felt like the quality of service wasn't amazing. I felt like people were taken advantage of. I felt like the pricing wasn't great for what things were offered, all these types of things. And so I straighted this dream and vision of what we could create. What could we build, right? And partner with the right people. Now, I didn't know what that looked like, but then along comes Noah. And through a bunch of just crazy instances of how things worked out, him and I had a similar dream and vision that we wanted to get rid of the stuff that we didn't love about corporate gyms, corporate training. And from my side of things, I wanted to take care of people. I pay our trainers very well, way above what the national average is, because they deserve it, right? And I believe that people should be able to, in a perfect world, do what they love and actually make a living at it. Now, that's easier said than done, right? You have to come up with the business model to be able to do that. But our partnership with ARC has allowed us to start that process, right? And then as far as the education side of things with NGPT, like I spend $15,000+ per year dumping into our team, education. I flew the whole team out to Colorado. We learned from a company N1, which is basically the basis of where we learn our biomechanics and program design. And we just want to offer a great product. But that's the starting point. That's the starting point of what we want to offer, right? We have to actually know what we're doing. It's not about just taking people through exercises. We want to help them get results by training for a specific purpose and actually knowing how to do that. But on the bigger scale of things, with having a team, I've read over the past, I don't know, 15 years, I've read hundreds and hundreds of books, ones on leadership, personal development, and I literally had nothing to apply that to until more recently, right? When I had a team to be responsible for and people that were looking to me to lead. And so I take a lot of the things that at least I learned theoretically through books and then I'm applying, and a lot of it's experimentation. The biggest thing that I instill to our trainers is like, I want you to be a good trainer, but this life is bigger than just personal training, right? For themselves. They need to pour into themselves. They need to be on their own personal growth journey. They need to develop themselves into who they're supposed to be. And then they'll be able to pour into other people. If your own cup is empty, how can you pour into other people? You can't.
You
Right?
can't.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't. And everything you said is essentially what I said to Noah, is that it's debunking everything that we've ever known. You could go to a Planet Fitness. You could go to a powertrain, which I've used to go to. You could go to all kinds of these crazy gyms, wherever those franchises are. But are you just a number, or are you an actual person that has needs and wants? And I feel like you are the latter, Brock. You want to have that relationship. And I know with working with you, with Yo, and even dealing with all these different people that you have been able to encounter, I see that compassion from you when it comes to that, even with what you've said. But here's my real question for you.
Yeah.
Although you say that you want to have those sort of things with your team and paying them above average and getting this world-class experience for your clients, do you feel that there are challenges along the way with being able to have that consistency, especially with the way fitness is? Because a lot of people don't take advantage of fitness, me, myself included, because I know that I could do a lot better with working out and doing things. And I've had plenty of people on the show that are local to Mechanicsburg, where you're located at, that have shared that. But I guess my question is, in your view, how do we start changing that conversation? I mean, you certainly are starting that with saying we need to pour into the people that we're working with. We need to be able to help them get to where they need to be. What makes you different is really my question to you.
Yep. And that goes back to, again, the science side of stuff is taken care of, the training, the program design, all that nutrition, right? That's the tip of the spear. That's the very beginning. So
Hmm.
this stuff that we're working on continuously, one of the reasons that we also hired you to come in and help coach us, and I want to continue that relationship down the road,
Full
is
disclosure
it's
to my
about,
listeners is that, yes, I have
yeah,
worked with Next Generation as a client of mine to help them get to where they need to be. So, yes, there's definitely, although there is that sales perspective, I enjoyed having Brock on the show for the sheer fact that he has an interesting story. So, I just want to clear up any sort of naysayers out there that might be
yeah,
thinking, oh, he paid to be on the show. He did not. I
no.
actually wanted him to be part
And
of this experience.
I'll say this for any of the listeners, if you have a need for not just public speaking stuff, but for life coaching and business coaching, I hope that you reach out to Josh. By the way, he didn't pay me to say this. I'm just saying because, listen, it took one meeting. Mike and I met with you maybe a couple months ago. It took one meeting with you to say, dude, this is a guy I want to partner with. Like legitimate, and not just like the short term, like long term.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, man. And so whoever's listening to this right now, and this is going to continue to grow, I hope you reach out sooner than later because there's going to be a time when he won't be available to do it himself, right? And he'll have a team of people working for him. I'm speaking it,
Absolutely.
I'm telling you.
That's the
Yeah,
goal. No, that's speaking from the heart right there, Brock, because that's really been the goal all along, is that I would love to
yeah,
grow this out and have people have the best versions of themselves. But in any event,
100%.
I'll let you continue with the answer to that
Yeah,
question I had.
yeah. So we're having conversations with our team more than anything right now that it's about building relationships with your people, which is interesting because in most of your generic, well, they're nationally accredited, but they're still generic personal training certifications. They basically tell you to never talk about personal stuff, never talk about religion, politics, all these other things. The reality is, if you want a relationship with someone and for them to stay with you long term, somewhere along the way, you might end up talking about all of those things, right? I have clients that have been with me for 15 plus years. It's not that they don't know what to do. Some of it's accountability, still, some of it's like they like to be pushed, but it's still about the conversation piece that you have along the way. And from what we have seen, we have great attrition. I mean, amazing attrition as far as a company is concerned in this industry. It's way higher than the average. But I do see that some of the trainers that tend to lose clients, not because of anything they did wrong, but a lot of it is because there's not a relationship there, right? And as interesting as it is, sometimes these relationships that you build, I want to say they're therapy sessions, but you just learn a lot about people. And sometimes we're the only people they actually get a chance to talk to candidly in their entire lives,
Yeah.
legitimately, right? We're seeing people 2, 3, 4 hours a week sometimes, depending on how many times they work. So that's a lot. You end up having these relationships with people.
Let's be honest, that's unheard of when it comes to going into the 4, 5, 6 hour range with something like this because you're thinking, well, I only need to work out maybe 2, 3 times a week. I only have to really worry about food then after that, making sure I keep it at a level that is for my nutritional needs. But you're taking the science. I'm literally reading this from your website. You're taking the techniques and you're taking the science and you're creating the results, but you're doing much more than that. You're building what I think is the most important thing that we're missing in this world, which is having those relationships with others. So, Brock, we're almost at the end of time, but I have this final question for you to really cap this conversation because this has been incredible for me just to hear this. And this is really, as I mentioned, this is the eve, and this is unusual for me to be doing an episode right before the eve of my 100th episode where I'm actually have a guest on. I have met several dozens of people on this program that less than a year ago I started this. And I've just been fascinated by the conversations of different people and what they
Yeah.
have shared as knowledge and information. I think for you, you have such a unique background that has just kept you pushing along. So I guess my question is this. What would you say to those out there that are just sitting on the couch? They're not sure what to do to get started. Maybe they have a previous record of criminal activity and they are just shunned by society. But yet you've taken the reins and said, no, I'm not going to let that define me. I'm going to do something because I was giving a chance. What would you say to someone that might be going through those hard times and they need that dose of inspiration from somebody like Brock? What would you say to them?
Yeah. I would say it'd be multifaceted, but there's a couple things that I would say is that one, you have to get started. You have to stop believing. I'm gonna get emotional.
Dude,
You have
let
to
it all
stop
out. Speak
believing.
from the heart
Yeah,
for with me because this is like the eve of something big, and I would love to hear what you
yeah.
guys say, and so do my listeners.
You have to stop believing what those inner voices are telling you about yourself. And it's really, really hard. But the only way to combat that is you got to start putting good stuff in, which takes discipline, which takes effort, which takes consistency. So that's the place that you have to start. And as challenging as this may also sound, you have to change your association. You'll realize that as you continue to hang out with the same people, and I get it, dude, they're your boys, they're your friends, they're your people. But if you're looking to be different, you have to change who you are mentally, emotionally. You have to change your association, but it starts with day one. And you're not going to change everything overnight or over a week or a month or even a year, but you got to start the journey, right? And that's the biggest thing I can say. And it's just continuous effort and drive to want to be different. Sometimes I think that's inherent in people. I really do. Some of it I think needs to be learned and can be learned, right? Some people have great natural ability to do things, a leadership or whatever. Some people don't have those natural abilities. I didn't. And again, you didn't know me 20 years ago, right? And I'm not even polished now, but I'm getting better. But it just takes time, effort, and changing association and believing in yourself. And listen, I'm big on self talk too, all the time, speaking to myself in the mirror. Something I'll do, I'll just share this really quick, is every night before my son goes to sleep, We have affirmations that we say. He says his own. I'm a leader. I'm a champion. I'm a winner. I'm confident. I'm bold. I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic. All these things. Then I pour into him. I say all the things that I see in him. So you might not have someone to say those things to yourself yet. So you have to start saying them to yourself, right? And I know it's weird, but the subconscious mind doesn't know right from wrong, different from indifferent. So it'll start believing the things that you're telling yourself. That's all I have to say. I think that's a great place to start, but it does take action, and that's the biggest thing.
Dude, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, yeah, you're absolutely right. And then at the same time, I'm saying to myself, I could have used that advice 20 years ago when I was faced in front of a judge and I was being told, yeah, you're going to get charged with terroristic threats, pointing a handgun at some kids, which is a whole long story in itself. And yes, listeners, I have been through that process as a kid. But to realize that you have to give yourself that pep talk of you are worthy of all the good things that will ever happen in your life and that you deserve them. Brock, dude, that is such a profound thing that we miss in this world where we've had
Yeah.
people that want to just tear you down on Facebook. They want to rip you apart with your opinions. They want to say
Yeah.
what they have on their minds, which, yeah, they're entitled to that. But the problem with that is there's no word to describe it other than saying that they don't have compassion. And you,
Yeah, man.
sir, have a lot of that. And I see that with what you do on a day-to-day basis. But Brock, with all that said, I think people are inspired by hearing this. So with that said, how can people reach out to you if they're interested in maybe some personal training? Maybe they're local to Mechanicsburg and they actually want to come in and get some information from you about nutrition coaching and personal training.
Yeah.
How can they do all that? And I mean, by all means, maybe they have some questions for you personally. And if you feel so bold, maybe you want to share how they can reach out to you. But in all of that,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the last few moments to do that.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways. One, you could reach us in person. You can come to 220 North York Street, Mechanicsburg. That's where Arc Fitness is at. And we're there all the time. The trainers are there. Noah will be there most of the time. And to reach us online, you can go to arcfitclub.com and go into the training section. You can put an inquiry there. You can find us on Instagram, next generation underscore PT, or you can find my personal one on there too. We're also on Facebook. So we're all over the place. Feel free to send me a personal message if you have a question about nutrition, training, anything, honestly. Or you can put an inquiry online and we get back to you within 48 hours. We get a lot of inquiries. We're still growing like crazy, but we're trying to be pretty prompt with our customer service.
I have to tell you, you're pretty prompt with the fact that you have been through incredible amount of things that I think even for some of my listeners, their probably mouths are dropping open as to how you have this incredible energy to keep moving forward. But here's the deal, Brock. Not only have you survived those tumultuous periods of your life in which you've kind of been asking yourself, why did I have to go through this trial in the first place? Because you had an awesome mom who drove all the way from Waluk to help you, bail you out when you needed it the most. But more
Yeah.
importantly, you have people in your life that love and care about you. And I could tell that because they bail you out too, myself included, as somebody that has gotten to know you and by all means gotten to know both Noah and you and why you've built this incredible, awesome experience for people that I'm telling you guys, if you're not going to Arc Fitness, if you're not checking out Next Generation Personal Training, you are missing out on the next generation, the next era of what fitness is all about because it isn't just about your mind. It isn't just about the body in which we have physically, but it's about how we use all that emotional opportunity to create the best versions of ourselves. So, Brock, with all that said,
So
thank you
good.
for being one of my last guests before I turn 3 digits here on Speaking from the
Let's
Heart.
go.
I am
Yeah,
so
man.
pumped after this conversation. I am honored that you've been part of this experience with me. So thank you from the bottom of
Thanks.
my heart.
Thank you so much thanks for having me on, brother. I really appreciate it.
I want to thank Brock so much for being so open on this show and being part of this team, Arc Fitness, Next Generation Personal Training, the whole group, both Noah's team, Brock's team, and even John Neinfert, who wasn't mentioned as much on this episode, but also is a big key player. I want to thank the three of those gentlemen for really being part of a bigger expansion into the Mechanicsburg area and having hearts of gold because they certainly go above and beyond not only in their service philosophy, being able to help others, and enjoy what life has to offer for not only themselves, but also their clients and empowering them to be able to do just that. I will encourage you, if you are interested, to check out episode number 6, in which we featured Noah, and I hope to have John Nyford on the show in the near future as well. But let's talk about Brock for a moment, because oh my goodness, there is so much to unpack here. And I think one of the first things that is really important about what is truly necessary in our life is getting out of the lifestyle that we have and being involved with something that we really want to enjoy doing in our lives, but being held back is really what's causing it to not happen in the first place. We have these genetic codes that we build inside of ourselves. They create habits, whether they are good or bad, in our lives. And those thoughts and those patterns keep on repeating in our brains to the point that we're not able to achieve what is truly necessary. I have those genetics working against me time and time again myself. But I've learned that I have to keep pushing forward. I know that I have to be better and go through the hell, as Brock even mentioned, to get to that side where we need to be able to learn and grow for who we are. Are you fighting for all the right reasons or all the wrong reasons? Because everything can go wrong. And especially when you're going through some of the toughest challenges in your life, you are definitely on the receiving end of so much crap. And we've talked about that stuff in the previous episodes about the importance of not only understanding what that crap is, but then being able to navigate through it in a methodical pattern, be able to understand that when those triggers are going to happen, that you're able to address them carefully and clearly. I know for me, working with a therapist, it's allowed me to help so much with understanding the true implications of going through those sort of issues. We need to be able to understand what those moments are in our lives that might change us forever, but be prepared to be able to make a decision that might have ill-attended consequences down the road, which we even talked about with Kanisha Hart in her 2-part episode recently. But can you honestly say that you create opportunities to change yourself? Brock's team of over 12 trainers now has been able to do all those things for his clients and continue to build on the philosophy of being able to provide integrity and respect and excellence at every step of the way. Brock is somebody that I have gotten to know over these past few years, and as we even disclosed, have been able to work together in a long-term partnership, which I'm really have been excited to develop his team and himself and become the best versions of themselves in their business venture. But being able to coach and being able to pull somebody through, regardless of what those issues are, can be a challenge in itself. That means we have to meet our past version at some level and be able to say that you are no longer allowed to be here and you no longer have permission to visit me. We often have talked about in this show about getting an accountability partner, but Brock's team does so much more than that. As a matter of fact, and we've even mentioned in episode 6, that these guys are challenging the status quo of the fitness industry. Instead of inviting people in for the new year to all join at once so that then they can meet their New Year's resolutions, they continue to have the worst deal ever, making things charged way overpriced because they know that they're also serving the clients that they have existing, so they don't pack the gyms just because people have this fluke idea of wanting to meet their New Year's resolutions. They are debunking some of the things that, even on this show, that we try to debunk ourselves, which is not just taking advantage of clients, which they certainly don't do, but also getting paid for the things that they are providing. And they invest so much, not just in their clients, but in their trainers as well. Brock's team has gone through some evolutionary changes in which I have to ask you a similar question. What kinds of evolutionary changes have you been able to do? Brock talked a lot about his habits and being willing to change not only the things that he wants to do on a day-to-day basis, but surround himself with the positive influences that are needed, whether those are reading good books, listening to good podcasts, or even indulging in some good conversation with other people. Because when you cross the barrier between what is the negative and going into the positive, and you're changing yourself to become that best version of who you are, there is a fundamental evolutionary shift, and it's a very hard process, just as much as leg day can be when you're going to the gym. And trust me, even though I haven't been to the gym recently, which I know I'm going to get yelled at for this episode for mentioning that, and I will then be encouraged to get in the gym and work out with the next generation personal training team, I will say to you that even though leg day sucks, it is sometimes worth it to go through that endurance, to go through that pain, because you're using things that you have not used in such a long time. And it isn't just about the science of what you eat and also what you do in terms of the mechanics of your body and understanding the methodology of how to work out. What if you start to figure out that you need to work out so much more than just your physical, but also your mental aptitudes? Mentally, you have to be just as prepared to improve yourself as you do physically. And next generation personal training really does that. And that's not to say that I've been paid to say that. I have seen it in action as a casual observer and being able to go to the gym myself. These guys do something different than no other gym does, which is what I want you to do, my listeners. I want you to do something a little bit different that you haven't done before. I want you to challenge the status quo in your own lives. I want you to give yourself that pep talk so that you're no longer telling yourself no. I would not be remiss to say that we're on the eve of the 100th episode now, which I've been teasing you for the last few weeks about. As I reflect on this episode with this guest, along with all the guests that have ever graced my presence on Speaking from the Heart, there's something that really resonates with me about the value of having that pep talk of being able to tell ourselves no. If you listen back to each and every person, including Brock today, you will notice that these people have challenged the status quo. They are willing to work on themselves regardless of what anybody else wants to say or do. And they're willing to do things that normal people don't do. And that is usually work on themselves. That's it. If you're just willing to work on yourself just a little bit each day, even if it's just 30 minutes, as simple as a cardio exercise or a leg, core, upper body routine at the gym, if you're able to spend just 31 minutes instead, that extra 60 seconds of your life, if you're willing to pour into that, can make such a big difference in the overall grand scheme of things. Let's ask the question again. Can you honestly say that you can create opportunities for changing yourself? I don't know about you, but I wasn't chasing a police car. I wasn't chased by somebody. But I was chased by police when I was going through the roughest part of my life at 16 years of age. You see, the most common connection between my guest today and also myself is that I also had the possibility of facing jail time. I didn't go to jail, but I certainly had the biggest scare of my life because I was just not happy with who I was becoming. I was not happy with the growth and support that I was receiving, and I was not investing in myself, even at 16 years of age. That moment in my life in which I faced a record that would have been for the rest of my life fundamentally changed me. It made me not just a better person overall, but allowed me to fight for the right reasons instead of the wrong. So I don't know about you, but you need to get out of the lifestyle that might be holding you back from creating not just those changes that you need to have, but being able to look elsewhere when those people that have been holding you back for so long are creating such a negative mindset for what's ahead. Because you are worthy to be paid what your worth is. And that isn't just about the monetary aspect. No. It's about the mental and physical things that you should be paid for. You should be able to feel healthy, engaged, and excited for the ideas, inspirations, and attitudes that you are allowing yourself to accept. So stop listening to those inner voices that are telling you no. because you are not being chased by the police. You are no longer a slave to the negativity that exists in your life. And when you cross that barrier of wanting to have the best version of yourself, not only are the things worthy of your life going to come alive, but you will see what will happen to you and others as a result of your amazing talents, amazing opportunities, and the things that you employ. And hey, if it doesn't all work out, at least I have a gym buddy for leg day. Thanks for listening to episode number 99, this very special episode of Speaking from the Heart. And I look forward to hearing from your heart in the 100th episode of this podcast very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.